So let's start that over. So there you go. That was the slide I was talking to right there. So um, the ideal, I guess overall that we want to convey in this is really that, e-commerce sites need to be nimble. They need to be quick, stress-free. They need to have an ease of use. I mean, there's, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but ultimately it doesn't really matter how awesome your reach is, or how good your reach is, or how awesome your online advertising is. If you have a terrible e-commerce site, it's not going to materialize into sales for you. So hopefully these components help you guys out. So first tip, and this is probably, in my opinion, the most important one. So remember the end user. You hear me a lot in our training classes talk about the know your target audience, know your client, so on and so forth. It applies here as much as it does everything else we do. So the end user is ultimately who we're trying to sell to. So every single detail of your e-commerce site, from design to product pages, images, you name it, where you place contact forms, there's so much to it. It all needs to equate down to how your clients interact with you, and your clients best. And I can give a ton of different options, but again, the biggest thing that we stress to any client really is just, you have so much valuable information as a client. Whoever designs your website, or even if you're building it yourself, you need to be a part of that development process, because you're going to be able to add insight that, quite honestly, even the best marketing person just can't get into without your information. So your storefront should give the best first impression. I always tell clients that, listen, you have to put your best foot forward. You get one at making a great first impression, and after that, it's pretty much all downhill if you don't nail it. So, this is your opportunity. So don't go cheap on the e-commerce site. Don't, skip or stuff like that. You want to make sure that you're given that best first impression. So keep that user in mind when you're, designing your page menus. What are people searching for? If you have a brick and mortar store, what aisles do you have? I mean, and again, this is an oversimplification, but, think about your business and how your day-to-day runs. Your e-commerce site shouldn't be all that much different. The user experience is what it's all about. So within we call it the UX design, but the user experience design, you have the interface of the website, you have the navigation, the sub pages or structuring, the overall design. User usability, accessibility, all of these things play a factor into the overall design. So normally, just to kind of give, and we have a little check sheet if anybody ever wants it, I can send you over a little check sheet that we use to make sure that we are meeting those needs when we talk to a client about how they structure a site. Again, really simple things that most people take for granted. It's almost comes as second nature, but it's worth, taking a second look or getting a second opinion, if you will. And this will help a lot, I think. So anyway, UX design, super, super, super. And this, again, there's more to it than this, but these are just the general categories, if you will. Sophistication's not always the best. I always use the car dealership analogies that, you don't necessarily need to have pop-ups and unicorns and glitter and all this other fun stuff. I know it sounds great, and sure, you have the modern, most techie website out there, but believe it or not, a minimalist website is actually rated more visually appealing and more trustworthy than those crazy, like, complex designs. So if you want to optimize your e-commerce site for conversions, consider simplifying it. Now, what does that mean? That means we have smart use of space. And so, again, white space can be a pet peeve for some people. Some people look at it like wasted space. It's not optimized properly, but sometimes good use of white space can be visually appealing. So when you're going through the website design, really take a minimalist approach first. You don't need to have background videos running. You don't need to have, all of these different sliders and interactive tools. Scale it. If, one engagement feature, so let's just use an example. An engagement feature is something we place on sites to compel a user to take an action. So we want somebody to get engaged, as an example. Some sites I've been to, they'll have 2 or 3 different engagement features. I've been on, if you ever go to like insurance websites, and not to pick on insurance agents, but you go to the big boys out there, typically they'll have 1 or 2 different pop-ups that come up at any given time. Hey, are you, how can we save you $500? Fill this out. Hey, are you covered the right way? Fill this thing out. Sometimes those can be cumbersome, and those can be, just overly complicated. A lot of the times people just want simplified designs. So when you're looking at this, again, simple colors, you don't have to go crazy with it. So we always tell clients, we'll do whatever you need us to do, but at the end of the day, maybe you should consider maybe a less or a simplified design. That little view cart button, I'll tell you, believe it or not all e-commerce carts come with them. The view cart feature is huge. I can't stress this enough. I know for me, and let's just use Amazon, for example, sometimes I forget what I put in my cart. Let's just be honest. Or I find something better that I want and I need to go take that out. The view cart option is something that needs to be enabled on most e-commerce platforms. And if you didn't do it, so let's just say you have your own builder that you did, or you designed your own e-commerce cart, just make sure that feature is enabled. Having the button visible at all times while customers are online, it has been proven to increase conversion rates. So again, don't take that for granted. Make sure the icon is visible. A lot of the times there's like a little cart button. Sometimes it's not as easy to find, especially on a mobile device. So we like to accent those. We like to put, again, using this little button as an example, some color around it, make sure it stands out, because believe it or not, it'll help you out in the long run. Pricing is always a concern. This is the tough part, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating for a lot of consumers. So when we talk about simplifying your pricing, when we look at an e-commerce design or an e-commerce website, what we don't want to do is we don't want to have different pricing models over here. We don't want to find, and actually I was trying to think of an example before this seminar. I had one the other day and now it's going to escape me. But if you've ever been on those sites where, you saw for one price, it's another price online, it's another price over here, that builds distrust with consumers. And so what you really need to do, we always say honesty is the best policy. And it's not that you're being dishonest. There's a lot of different pricing strategies out there. But when you're designing your e-commerce website, just remember, be upfront and honest about the price. Don't tack on miscellaneous fees on the back end. That always goes to frustrate. So we always push transparency. So an example would be, if this product costs $500 and, you'll have a shipping fee, be upfront about that. Make sure in your product descriptions that you make sure clients understand moving forward, get to that checkout feature, exactly what they're going to expect. A lot of the times that can sway, and that's a huge reason for abandoned carts, is not having that straightforward pricing. Again, not to pick on auto dealerships, but if you go into the car business or if you go into the dealership, you go to buy a car, and then, well, that window sticker is not always what the end result is. So, just think about that. Is that the type of message that you want to push forward with your clients, or, could you be a little more transparent with things? So again, really, really, really focus on your pricing and make sure. Now, one way, just to add a little caveat into this, is coupon codes. A lot of people, we run coupons. That's just a fact, to incentivize, certain products or the purchase of certain products. So it's not bad to use coupon codes. Those are more than acceptable. But again, be strategic with that. We want to make sure that, our e-commerce clients don't feel like because they didn't have one that, they didn't get the best deal. You'll have a lot of times you'll see negative client experiences where they'll come back and say, well, wait a minute, now you're advertising this for a cheaper price. So be cognizant of how you use that and where that message gets out. And if it's worth that, salvaging that client relationship, that might be something that, again, being upfront and transparent with your pricing that you offer them either in advance or in hindsight. So pricing is a huge, huge, huge customer relationship tool. Moving on, distractions. So this more or less goes along with some of the initial, conversation or slides that we went over, was avoiding distractions. Again, unicorns shooting across the screen, glitter falling down, pop-ups, and all these things. It can be distracting. And so what we want to do is we want to create a simplified design. So when we look at an e-commerce website, again, the idea is sales. That's what we need to push. And it's okay to include some additional information like blogs and stuff like that. Give options to sign up for newsletters, and a pop-up here and there for different things is not out of the question. Certainly there's a time and place for everything, but just make sure that it's not taking away from the overall user experience. So again, best example I can give, going back to the car dealership or the auto insurance websites, is that multiple pop-ups, those get distracting, and we want to be aware of that. There was another website that we were on, again, this was insurance related, and there was a pop-up for, again, get a quote. There was a pop-up again reminding me how I can save money. There was a pop-up showing their community involvement. It was overwhelming, and it really did honestly take away from my overall goal, which is what I was on the site to do in the first place. So just be cognizant of that. We want to try to avoid those distractions. So does that mean that we don't put that stuff up? Of course not. We just need to find that time and that place to do it. So an example would be, and if you've taken any of my classes before, I always talk about humanizing the brand. That's a huge, huge thing nowadays, especially with so many businesses going online. Is you really need to humanize your brand. You need to remind people why they should do business with you, and that you are a small business, or you do give back to the community, so on and so forth. So humanizing the brand is a huge component. That's okay to have a static section on the site. That's not a pop-up. That's not something that's jumping out at you, flashing and all sorts of craziness. Just maybe a section on there, like we have on our website, nonprofit charities that we in our community that we support. You can feature that stuff, and it doesn't have to be a distraction. It has its own time and place. So if you need examples or you need some guidance on that, we're more than happy to offer suggestions. So the ultimate is, we want to avoid things that distract somebody from making that. So typically, we'll get into some statistics here in a little bit, but we'll talk about what those distractions do and how they really can make a huge impact. So next up, always my big pet peeve, images. It's probably one of the more challenging professions, in my opinion. We do pictures for clients all the time, and I'll tell you what, things that you think are amazing, somebody else doesn't. And, it can be demoralizing sometimes, but at the end of the day, don't go cheap on the photos. Get a professional. And even for us as a marketing agency, I hire people to do my clients' photos. And the reason being is, again, it is so, so, so important to have that dynamic visual nowadays, especially with e-commerce. With brick and mortar stores, you can easily walk in, I can touch, I can feel. Well, that's not everybody's preference anymore. Unfortunately, a lot of people, they don't necessarily want to go into the store anymore. I know for us, our epiphany was the grocery store. I'm not going to lie, I absolutely love ordering my Safeway delivery. It is like just a dream come true because I hate going to the grocery store. With that said, though, there are a lot of challenges with that. Sometimes we don't get the right product. Sometimes I get the wrong size. There's a lot of things with that. So make sure you're descriptive. Make sure that it's easy to navigate. When you're doing your photos tell that story, and they're amazing. Another one that you can do, which we don't have featured here, but the video tutorials, those are just blowing up right now. We talked about it in our last class, but doing those little product demos, those are huge because, again, it helps people get as close as possible to touching and feeling it that they possibly can get to. So consider that. Again, it's a pain point, but you got to have high quality dynamic photos. Some of the more challenging ones are always people. So again, when you look at featuring your staff, we're trying to avoid selfies. We're trying to do, awesome headshots, stuff like that. Sometimes in the moment photos are usually the best, but just be cognizant, look at them, double check them. Don't be afraid to send them for editing. That's another thing. A lot of photographers do amazing jobs editing. You can even go to sources like Fiverr. There's some phenomenal photo editors on Fiverr that can really enhance and, make those what they need to be. So that way you can maybe avoid reshooting. So again, where there's a will, there's a way. There's tons of resources out there. So just make sure with photos and videos, don't go cheap on that stuff. Make sure that, they're as amazing as you want them or that they need to be. Next up, product reviews. So this is one when we talk about builders in a few minutes. This is a big one because believe it or not all e-commerce builders or tools have this feature. And so, it's one that is gaining and well, it's always been there in terms of popularity and in terms of usefulness, but 61% of shoppers report reading the reviews before deciding. Now, I will tell you that that number was higher before and it started to go down. There's a lot of theories on why that is, but I tend to lean towards two. First and foremost, just saturation. There's a ton of products online, and normally what we do is we just look at the star rating. So, they kind of muddied the water with fake reviews and stuff like that. So I think part of it is just, by virtue of availability, sometimes we just, hey, I need this, let's order it and let's get it done with. Other times, maybe with larger purchases, I might read a review. I might actually go through and look at them. I tend to read the negative ones though. I mean, versus the positive. But just remember, get out of it what you want. Always have the option for clients to leave those reviews. We are the experts in our field, and I always feel that, whenever I'm selling a product or something like that, I always want to make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward, and that will ultimately translate into positive reviews, because if you're making the right sale, if you're selling the right thing to a client, typically that works out in your favor. Now, again, sometimes clients purchase the wrong thing, products break, delivery doesn't go as expected. Those are understandable. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. But for the most part, product reviews are going to be a huge, huge, huge thing. There's also some SEO settings on the backside, which is your schema markup, to have those products visible in search with that 5-star rating, or that review rating, can be huge. It can be that distinguishing point between you and a competitor. So try to make sure that that feature is enabled in your builder should you build your own website. Next up, organization and navigation. So this is another one. Again, you'll hear kind of a common theme. We're going back over a lot of the same things time and time again, and I'm doing that for a reason, because it's important to drive this point home. Is you have to know your target audience. You have to understand who you're trying to sell to in order to make that awesome e-commerce site. I've built thousands of sites in my day, and I'll tell you, even my own website that we've built, I'm still not happy with it. I still update things constantly on it. Websites should be living, breathing things. These should not be something where you set it and forget it just because you paid a few $1,000 that, oh, it's good to go. This is, again, something that you should hire a web designer or web developer that's engaged with your business as much as you are, that is willing and open to making these updates, because, again, that's what's going to translate into business for you. So organization and navigation is key. So you got to make it easy for people to navigate your website, to find your products. It really should tell a story. That's, again, a big component of any website. Doesn't matter if it's e-commerce or not. You need to be able to tell a story. You need to be able to establish your authority on the matter, that people trust you, that, hey, I should buy from this guy because X, Y, and Z. So telling that story is super, super, super important. Now, with some industries, like, I'm just using the images that are down below, but if you look at, a supplements company, sometimes it's, one of those things that we need to look through maybe a PR avenue to gain that, that confidence, that credibility, if you will. Other times when it's like clothing, product related, hats, anything like that, those sometimes is just about telling that story about the quality of the material, something like that. So really think that through. What appeals to your clients? Now, if you're just building an e-commerce store for the first time, and maybe you've had a brick and mortar store, or maybe you've done this for years, don't be afraid to reach out to your clients and ask them what influences their buying decisions. That's a huge, again, another huge resource that is way undervalued, is that most of us forget to ask our clients, ask the people that have been loyal to us or that have purchased from us in the past. Don't be afraid to do that. Ask them, hey, what do you think would make for a good website? And I mean, again, that's an oversimplification for the question, but, really dig down deep. Try to keep, be respectful of somebody's time. So I always say, I keep my questions to about 5 to 8 at the most. So that way, it's not too many that people tune out, but it's not too few that I can't gather valuable data. But that'll ultimately translate into how you develop and build your site. Scarcity. Scarcity always sells. If there's a limited quantity, limited supply, limited time, those are things that typically do, fortunate or unfortunate, compel people to make an action. So are your products going out of stock often? Maybe that's a good thing. Brand bestsellers, products out of stock, limited stock, sold tags, stuff like that. There's a rhyme and a reason. So I'll give you kind of one of our little things, is that anytime we build an e-commerce site, there will be on every page at least one item that's sold out. And that's to show that people are purchasing it. I don't want to say, I don't like the tricks, customer psychology, but it really does. It's a way to, help people get out of their own way is really the best way to put it. Showing people that other people are purchasing, other people are doing business with the company. Again, it shows volume. So that's something that we always recommend, but there's other ways to do that too. Again, limited quantity. We work with many customers that, they truly do have a limited quantity of an item. So real-time inventory tracking is a huge plus behind an e-commerce site, but more so, it can really spur that impulse buying. So, think about that. If you have a product or service, or a product that you're selling online, think about that. You have limited availability. Same thing with service-based businesses. We do this all the time as well, is that when you look at a calendar and it's wide open, well, that doesn't inspire much confidence, does it? So think about that. For service-based businesses, we do the same thing where, you'll fill out, certain product or certain times that, maybe they're just, I don't know, sales time, maybe their follow-up time, whatever it is, but we fill out the calendar to show scarcity. So think that through. I know this sounds ridiculous, but you would be amazed at how many websites don't have contact information. A lot of people go into e-commerce and they think to themselves that the products will sell themselves, somebody should naturally want what I have, so on and so forth, and they'll order it. Well, that seldom happens like that. The reality is people have questions. People need to feel like their needs can be met. They want reassurances on things. There's a variety of reasons, but contact information is huge. So make sure you have that. Make sure you have a channel or an avenue that is realistic. I've seen countless instances where you'll have a client that, they put a phone number down, but they never answer that phone number. That's going to ultimately translate into a bad customer experience, and your product reviews and your business reviews are going to be affected by it. Again, email channel tends to be the best. I'm always leery about social media because it's public, especially, you'll have some of these businesses now that, they use Twitter or they use social as a means for customer service. Personally, I find that to be a horrible idea because, again, anything that's public, anybody that somebody can see, that just may not go in your favor. So email to me is always the best one. There's also a lot of free or really inexpensive like chat tools out there. Chat's a huge one. We use it on our website. We use a program called Live Chat for anybody who, is interested. It's very inexpensive, and it provides that immediate real-time satisfaction that somebody's looking for. So ultimately, we book a lot of appointments using that, and that's just because we're there to, answer questions, to build that trust and confidence with the client that ultimately translates into an appointment. So for us, being a service-based business, that's what works for us. A lot of times for e-commerce, again, there's chat feature works fantastic. Just make sure that whoever answers that chat is able to speak to the product, speak to the services, whatever it is that you're offering, because sometimes, again, even the best of intentions can turn south if that person doesn't know what they're doing. So food for thought, been there, done that type thing. And last but not least, actually one more slide after this. So our platforms, there's a lot of them. This is only a very small number of them, in fact. I will just tell you, no matter what you choose, they all have great features. I don't knock any of them. I will say that some of them do require a little bit more technical expertise than others. Some of the more popular ones, I'm sure if you've ever been in the space, you'll understand them. Squarespace is a popular one. You see that a lot with photographers. WooCommerce is our preferred platform. We do that. We do a ton of WooCommerce websites. BigCommerce as well. So WooCommerce, BigCommerce, Shopify, Wix. Wix is a really easy to use drag and drop builder. So again, no matter what your fancy is, I always give a list to clients if they ever want recommendations. This is exactly the list that I send out, and I always tell them, hey, here are kind of some of the top ones out there. Check them out. Find the, see what works and is easiest for you. A lot of them have free demos, free, 7 days free. Not that you want to, build 35 sites and, see which one works best, but, you're going to have to put a little effort into this. You're going to have to look around. You're going to have to play around and see, again, what features are important to you, what's not. But it's usually pretty easy once you get on their websites to kind of figure out, all right, yeah, this will work for me, or no, this won't. Again, we use WooCommerce a lot because, again, everything, there's a plugin for everything there. We build the initial sites on WordPress, and then we do a WooCommerce plugin. That, again, tends to satisfy most clients' needs. But again, if you sell on Etsy, you know, there's plugins for that. And again, I don't care what platform you use. Magento tends to require a little bit more of a technical expertise. You'll probably need a long-term web design to continue to update that. BigCommerce, WooCommerce are really, really simple. So whatever tickles your fancy. And then last but not least, reasons for abandoning carts. I saved this for last because, again, I think it's worth having a more detailed conversation. But, you know, statistics are statistics. We use numbers in everything that we do, and that's because data ultimately should translate into action. Perception is at the root of all evils for marketing. A lot of the times you see businesses make decisions based on perception, which, again, can ultimately be detrimental. So always use numbers to drive the decisions you make. When we look at this, 25%, so we'll just kind of go around the little wheel, if you will. My preferred payment option was not offered. So believe it or not, we still come across websites to this day that have merchant services that are done directly through individual banks. Nowadays, again, there's so many e-commerce payment options. I can't fathom why somebody wouldn't offer this, but you'll find a lot of instances where maybe more commonly nowadays, I would say, is the Apple Pay and Google Pay aren't offered, even though, again, there's tons and tons of or online merchants that offer that. So, you know your client best. If that's and a lot of people are coming in doing GPay or doing Apple Pay, you might want to look into that. But again, PayPal, Google Checkout, stuff like that, those are some options that are fairly new that some businesses just don't have. I didn't want to register, create an account to make a purchase. Always make sure you have a guest option enabled. Again, some people just are really, really, really protective of their privacy. That also stands to reason that any e-commerce store now, there are 3 things that you absolutely must have in terms of legal protections, if you will. We always tell clients you need to have a terms and conditions page. That tells people what they're able to do on the site, what they're where the images come from, how to use it, so on and so forth. So there's some easy, we'll just say builders online, I guess you could say, or websites that auto-generate those for you. But read through them. These aren't things that you should play around with. These are things that, know your profession, know what's required, know what you need before you just start doing them. Privacy policy, that's a requirement. You need to have a privacy policy. People need to understand what you are or are not going to do with their data. I know I don't do business where I don't even go to sites that don't have a privacy policy, and that's just not because I'm crazy about it, but because it's super important. You need to make sure that somebody's not going off and selling your info, and all of a sudden now you're getting all these crazy text messages and emails and stuff. I don't want that. So and then the third one is going to be, so terms and conditions, privacy, and then third one is going to be your shipping and returns policy. If you don't have one, you will lose every single dispute. So I can't stress that enough. You must have a shipping and returns policy. And that goes back to setting the right expectations with clients. You must have that. And I've seen, again, countless websites where, somebody received a broken product or received a product that they don't want or didn't need or ended up not being what they were looking for. If that's the case and they dispute on you and you don't have that available to you, there's a good chance that that's going to come back in the client's favor and you're going to end up having to refund that money. And that's a terrible spot to be in. So make sure you have all those things. The estimated shipping time was too long for the amount I wanted to pay. Thank you, Amazon, for that one. Amazon has really, really, really kind of drilled us into that whole 2-day, overnight, whatever it is, get it the same day feature. We are impatient as a society. We have that, I want things now type mentality. And so unfortunately, it is what it is. This is what it takes to compete online. So for clients that have flat rate shipping, stuff like that, this is something that you want to be cognizant of. Always plan ahead. So make sure that you set those expectations that, products will arrive in X amount of days. If you have to do priority mail or 2-day shipping, whatever it is, but you got to make sure that you price for it. Typically, price is not the reason that people don't make a purchase. I know that I found instances where, the shipping cost is X amount. It doesn't even give me, it just says that it'll be here in 2 days. and here's the amount, and guess what? That ends up being UPS 2-day. It's expensive. You know, it is what it is, but I want the item in 2 days. So just make sure you give people options. Shipping and handling costs were listed too late during the checkout process. Again, a lot of people look at this as you stuffing fees. And so we want to be transparent. A lot of the times, a lot of these builders nowadays, a lot of these, or platforms, let's just say, they'll have options when you have a cart feature is for them to plug in a zip code or something to get an estimated cost of shipping up front. So if you have that, or if your builder has that, make sure that that's enabled. That's a great feature. And again, it just prevents people from having a bad user experience long-term. Let's see, next up, my order value wasn't large enough to qualify for free shipping. So those are all those ones that, you know, hey, spend $99 and, you know, get free shipping, that type of stuff. You can see it's a detractor. And so 50% of carts were abandoned for that. A lot of the times businesses will set those thresholds too high based on their product need. I'll give you an example. I have a kitchenware store that's out of state. They sell some amazing products. Now they do flat rate shipping, but again, free shipping on items over $100. Now, when you're talking, you know, wine, corkscrews, you know, corkscrew sets and this and that, I mean, we're talking, I mean, average cart order being 60, 70 bucks. You know, very few of her clients actually meet that threshold. And so again, it's a great lure in. It's a great, you know, hey, look at me, and, you know, gets people to actually go into the website and actually start making some progress. But then when they get to checkout and they realize, oh man, now I have to pay a flat rate shipping on all of these items. Ugh, you know. Again, there's two ways to look at it, but statistically speaking, that's a cause for 50% of the abandoned carts, or 50%. There's a reason, 50%. There you go. I was not ready to purchase. I wanted to save the cart for later. There you go. A lot of people that they don't have those cart features enabled that we talked about earlier. View cart, again, big one for that. So make sure you have that enabled. They want to be able to save the cart. So always make sure, again, you have the privacy concerns for some people, I get that, but always make sure that users can create an account. And that's important because sometimes, especially look at Amazon, my goodness, they do fantastic at advertising. Because I'll tell you what, I look at a product, and if I don't buy it, inevitably within a couple of days, I'm getting some type of, you know, email, display ad, something showing me that product again and incentivizing me to purchase it. So make sure you have an option for users to register and to save their cart for later. That's a big feature. Let's see here. Next up, I was not ready to purchase, but wanted to get an idea of what the total cost of shipping is. So again, that kind of goes back to the other one that we talked about. You know, this is where some creative marketing, some creative content writing can come in. So a lot of the times you'll see, if you've ever seen people walking around the store taking pictures of barcodes and doing that stuff, you know, they're looking to see if the price is better somewhere else. A lot of the times, and again, this may or may not be possible for you, but if there's some type of guarantee, if you have an exclusivity on an item, well, obviously this is a non-issue. But if you're selling the same thing that I can get at Costco, you know, on Amazon, so on and so forth, it might behoove you to offer some type of product or price guarantee. Or if you can't compete effectively against that, chances are you just may lose that sale, and you got to be okay with that. You know, it's okay not to, you know, bring yourself down to those rock bottom prices. You know, there's a lot of things for us small businesses that we have to take into account that unfortunately Amazon, they got their upper hand on us. But again, we need to also do a good job at reminding people why it's important to do business with us. That's the key. So again, if somebody, I always have, like when we build e-commerce sites, we'll always have a pop-up come up. You know, if somebody has left their cart open for too long, or if somebody will offer that extra layer of customer service. Hey, you know, do you have a question? Is there something we can answer? You know, so on and so forth. Those are really, really good features to help compel to make that extra purchase. Again, this is where chat features come in. You can actually, like, again, with the chat feature we use, you can actually initiate a chat with an individual that's on your site, and you can set those time frames. Like, I can see if somebody's been on my site for over, you know, however long. I can actually track how long they've been on my site. And then, hey, if they hit 5 minutes, it sends an alert to me saying, hey, this person might need some help. Boom, I can initiate a chat, and it pops up on their screen. How can I help you today? Or, hey, did you have any questions about blah, blah, blah. So those are great features to help reduce abandoned carts. And then shipping costs made the total purchase more than expected. Again, this just goes back to, setting the right expectations. It is what it is, and shipping costs are going up, up, up. So, it's something that when you see increases in, postal service and stuff like that, inevitably these statistics go up, but eventually they'll settle back down. Again, I can't stress it enough. The key is, make sure you have enough content. Make sure you've really done your job at convincing that person to purchase that item. I know that's kind of vague and it doesn't provide a lot of detail, but that's really the best you can do. Sometimes, again, just, even if you set the right expectations, you've done everything you can do. If it's just not financially in their wheelhouse, then it's just not. And you just gotta, some things are going to be acceptable losses, let's just say. So now I know that's a ton of information. Hopefully it wasn't too bland. Hopefully we can get some engagement, and you guys have a ton of questions, because I'll tell you, that's where you're gonna get your money's worth, if you will, out of this. Is ask the questions, ask individual things if you want. I'm here to help.